Folks, this is Randy Barfield, Barfield Home Inspection Services, talking to you today with Under the Roof with Randy Barfield. Today we're going to be talking about irrigation systems for the residential application. The heart and soul of the irrigation system is going to be your controller. And it's very important for the homeowner to check your controller on a periodic basis. I know that now we're getting into the summer months. It's going to be really important to water per your water supplier requirements, water restrictions. Right now, I believe everyone is going into voluntary 2 days a week per your address water days. And so it's going to be real important for you to come out to your controller and check it. Now, this is a Hunter controller. There are Rainbird controllers, there are Irrigation controllers, there are Orbit, Troy, there's even a few home automated ones like Rachio. But all of those you want to be able to check. And first thing is to make sure that you have the correct time on your controller. The next one is to make sure you're set on the correct day and the correct year. And all of that is you can go through your system and check it and see what day you're on, and if you're not, you then adjust it. And then you want to be able to check the days, your start days, your start times, and how long you're going to be running each zone. So in the summer, you're probably going to want to increase the run times so you can get enough watering for the grass, for your plants, and so they'll get enough nutrients, enough waters out of them and not dry up. If you start seeing your areas of your grass that are starting to turn brown, even though you're using the system, you may need to increase the run time, and that's where you come out here and increase the run time. My preference is to run your system in the early morning hours so that it's done about an hour before the sun comes up. That way the water has time to soak into the soil and it doesn't evaporate from the heat of the sun, and it's most effective. And what time you start means how many zones you have and how long you need to run that. But you can do those calculations. Like I run mine at 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's usually done by 6. And then by the time the sun comes up, the water's in the soil and all absorbed. And I believe also that 2 days a week is about all you need to run your system. Some people run it every day. I don't believe in that, because making the grass and the plants starve a little bit increases the root length of the grass. I'm not going to get into too much of that. That's another for somebody else to decide. But if you're watering every day, you have very short roots, and you really don't need to. You're overwatering and you're wasting water. And the whole point of the water restriction system is to save water. There's plenty of water. It's just there's so much that the treatment plants can treat. And so that's the reason why we go into restrictions. Now, if we go into a drought, of course, there'll be different drastic measures, but we're not at that right now. We're just trying to help the treatment plants treat as much as possible. So this is your controller. This is the inside of the controller. These are all the wires, the signal wires going to each zone. And like I said, check your system, make sure it's on the right time, make sure it's doing what it's supposed to. If you have a rain sensor, make sure it's on active and not bypass. You don't want to really water while you're raining. That's just wasting water. And that's your controller. And from here, it'll go to the zones, and you'll have several zones. There's no one big zone. You want to go, and your installer, whoever put your system in, a licensed irrigator, will give you what's called an as-built, or a plan of your system, and I'll show you what one looks like. And if we walk over here, we'll have a table of stuff that I've put together. And first off, this is what a typical as-built look like. You will see the design, you will see the placement of rotors, you will see the placement of valves, you will see the gallons per minute that each zone will be getting when it is on. This is the legend showing what each valve consists of, how many gallons per minute, what type it is, if it's a spray rotor, if it's a pop-up, if it's a drip emitter, if it's a bubbler, what have you. All of this will be in your as-built. And if you do not have one, I would contact your installer and see if you could get one. Or at least you can always make one. You can take a copy of your survey and you can draw the zones on there and color them different colors like some people do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you know where they're at. So get an idea, get a very good idea of how your system runs and check it every once in a while. And the way you do that is you will put it on a manual mode. And I'll get to that in a minute. But for now, these are different components of a sprinkler system. These are tools and these are parts. This is a spray rotor. It's a bigger system, covers a lot of area. This is a pop-up, a general pop-up. Covers a smaller area depending on how much coverage you want. You can get 10 feet coverage, 15 feet, 20 feet, 180 degree, 90 degree, 360 degree. All of them come in different sizes and different patterns. And then you have the new water conservation, what's called MP rotor style, where they put out the little fingers when they spray, and you get the same amount of coverage, but you use less water. And these are very popular right now and very strongly encouraged to be installed. These are called MP rotors. And then of course you have, this is typical piping. This size pipe would be your main supply line to your system. Then after that it goes, this is 1 inch, then it goes from here, it goes to 3/4 inch. And then from there it'll go to, elbows and joints for hooking up these systems, PVC lines. And then, then you have, of course, glue to put it all together. And then you have what I was showing, signal wire, red signal wire. There is no electricity that runs through this. It's a signal wire that tells the gates, the gate valves, when to open and to close and for how long and shut off. If you ever plan to do any servicing on your irrigation system, the first thing you're going to want is a shovel. Doesn't get any more simple than it is. You can get different kinds. You can get a sharpshooter, you can get a spade, you can get a flat head, you can get a square head. I don't care what you get as long as you're able to dig in there and get it up. Typically, the irrigation lines are about 6 to 8 inches down. Now, if it gets too complicated on where to find your gate valve or where to find your zones or where to find your line, you'll probably have to call a licensed irrigator, because at that point they're going to come out with called a toner, and they run it over and they find all of this for you in case, because most of the time these gate valves or covers are grown over and you don't see them, so then you'll have to find them. So all of these tools won't make any difference at that point because you'll use the irrigation contractor to make your repairs. But there are these tools for you. There's a kit, a sprinkler tool kit for replacing heads and repairing lines. This is Orbit makes one. There's a good channel, some channel locks, what everybody should use. Razor cutter, some wire cutters, different tools. You can get more, you can get less. Very important, I always recommend to have a pressure gauge because you want to know how much pressure you have coming off your water meter system or your water supply system. Plumbing code says that every residential house should have a maximum or should not be over 80 PSI, 80 pounds per square inch. There's not really a minimum, but of course, if you've got 20 pounds per square inch, you're probably not going to get a lot of flow and you're not going to be happy with it as a residential customer. So typically, I'd say around 50 to 65 is the most common water pressure. But it helps to check it every once in a while because sometimes the water companies will come by and they'll change a meter out or they'll change out a main valve and not tell anybody. And then all of a sudden one day your water pressure went from 65 to 100. And then you notice that several of your spray heads have blown off. And because the water company didn't tell you, maybe sometimes they do, but 100 to 120 PSI will definitely blow some sprinkler heads off. And if you start seeing that, you might need to check your water pressure and see why. And that could be the culprit. So back over to the controller, we're going to run through a manual zone operation. This is how I check a system when I'm checking it. Now, let me say that I am not a licensed irrigation contractor. I have taken the course, I have taken the exam, but I did not apply for my license because I have no intention of putting in irrigation systems. I only wanted it so I could know about them, so I can inspect it. So for that reason, or saying that, I am not licensed to do any repairs whatsoever on any system other than my own as the homeowner. I can do whatever repairs I need to on my system, but I cannot fix anybody else's. So when I do an inspection, all I do is a manual visual inspection. And what I do is I come over here and I put it on manual. It's on a manual program. I will cycle it to the first zone. This system has 8 zones. So, and then I'll put it over on the run, and then it will start running. And right now that zone is way over there on the other side of the yard, and it has popped up and started running. So I will go over there and I'll look at that zone and I'll make sure it's covering well and there's no broken heads. And then when I check that zone, I'll come back over and get my exercise because I'm doing a lot of walking, and I'll go to zone 2 and I'll do the same thing. Now there are irrigated contractors who will come and put buckets out in your yard under spray heads, and they will capture water for a certain amount of time and see how much water you are using. And that is a very involved system check that I don't do. It takes a couple of hours or more to do that, but there are people who do that, and then it'll catch that water and measure it and see how much you're using versus how much you're covering and when you're using it. So there are those kind of people that do that. I just don't know of any right now. And then we'll go to zone 3. And I can see zone 2 is turning off, and now zone 3 is coming on. And if you turn around and look at my yard, you can see that my yard is pretty lush and green. I put this grass in about 3 years ago. This is Zoysia, Palisade Zoysia, which is very drought tolerant. And it loves water. The more water you give it, the greener it gets. But once again, I'm only watering 2 days a week. That's all this yard needs to stay this healthy and green. So, and also you can get into, it's very important to feed your yard in the spring and fall, and that helps it maintain nutrients, especially when it's going through stress from the summer. But that's another topic for another day, or through somebody else that knows more about it than me. But this is the basics of an irrigation system, and it is very important for you to check your controller. I cannot say that enough. Go out and check your controller. 1, make sure it's working. 2, make sure it's on the right time and day. And 3, make sure you're on the right schedule. You don't want to water during the day on the wrong day, because your neighbor will let you know you're watering in the day on the wrong day, and you don't want to get a warning for that. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching and listening. And Under the Roof with Randy Barfield, BarfieldHomeInspection.com, 512-350-0123. Thanks, folks. See y'all later.